So I think first I want to talk about what we haven't done yet, right? And the
Mhm.
first thing that comes to mind is the Fey Courts.
Yep. We talk about the texture of the other world or Anwin in those lands. Am I saying it right? Anwin
Mhm.
again. Yeah. So
Yep.
Anwin is the Valak
Well, I guess there's
word.
different ways. There's Anun, and then there's like Anwin. Yeah.
Okay, so the Anun or Anwin,
Yeah.
they're the other world, and we talk about the texture of each world. It is slightly different, right? And the cosmology that we've established in Avallen is that each land, each god, each kind of each everyone has its own kind of Anwin. So they're different courts, and they don't necessarily like we imagine they can connect to each other. It's possible, but typically they don't. Right? They only connect to the mortal
Yeah, I
realm.
think it's just I imagine the other world to be a land of potential and
Yeah.
imagination, and so the beings that reside there, at least the most powerful ones, have the biggest influence over where they reside. So the other world of the Evermother resembles the Evermother and her strengths and powers, which is forests and trees and nature, and her Fae,
Yeah.
the Elil, the Dryads. Then when it comes to moving between realms, I mean, it's probably possible. But I just think it's not a question you should be asking how to. That you can't.
Yeah.
It's not like countries that border each other where you walk from here to
Exactly.
here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
should be something that you can't conceptualize as a mere mortal that walks from one street to another street. It
Yeah.
shouldn't work like that. It should be more.
Yeah, it's not like go up to 10th Street, turn right, and you're in the Everfather's realm. But if you go too far, you've actually got into whatever
Yeah, yeah,
It,
exactly. I mean, my
yeah, it doesn't
favorite
really.
thing in one of the starter adventures we used to write is that the adventurers would go into the other world and they would find a corridor that goes on forever. It just loops back on itself. Like
Oh right, yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
like the rules as you understand them as a mortal shouldn't apply in the other world, and you shouldn't expect them to. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's
So
good.
anyway, Fey Courts. So we haven't touched on the Fey Courts. We've talked about the Fey that each god has. In fact, I can go to the Bestiary here so we can see some of them. Where is the old Bestiary? Here we are. Here's some of our lovely Fey: the Bubak, the Coblin, the Alil, the Gwil, and the Morrigan. So we talked about them, what they look like, their kind of behaviour, but we haven't talked about the Fey Courts themselves. We haven't talked about specific Fey and the politics or where they reside or that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Sorry, give me 1 second.
Sure, I can keep talking. So the Fey Courts of the other world. Specifically, we want to include particular Fey, leaders, and I guess the politics of the court, right?
Yes, yeah. The politics, whatever that would mean.
Yeah, and we'd imagine that would be different. Like, I'd imagine some courts, like the Evermother's court, would be political in the way that we might imagine politics to be, where people connive and work against each other to gain upper hands, that kind of thing. Whereas other Fey courts, like that of the Everchild, I don't think they would have politics per se. It would be more chaotic and frivolous and just constant games of one-upmanship.
Yeah.
Feedback?
And I'm really interested in thinking about that more too, because you also think about how, like in stories, what reasons do the Fae? Because like in story, that's always the thing, right? In legend and myth, like the Fae coming to our world and holding court, or like drawing someone in and so on, and that's always an interesting question to answer.
Yeah, motivations, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that. It's good stuff.
Okay. So what else haven't we talked about, Kurt?
Well, we've talked about places, but I feel like there's fleshing out, what's the best way to put this? Either fleshing out the details of each sort of area, like each realm. I mean, what would we call clanland, realm? What's the best way to call them?
Clanlands, yeah.
Clanland. So fleshing out the details of each clanland and like zooming in on it, so to speak. Is not something we've done as much. We've done a little bit of it, like you said.
Yeah, like in the campaign book here, but you're talking about, I guess, where's the map of the Varna? Where's our lovely map? Here's our map of Avallen. So if we zoom in the Pencara, so we have settlements here, right? But are you talking you want a map just for the Pencara that lists every settlement, or are you saying I want to see what Kawer Dunham looks like and its surroundings?
In a way, both, right? I want to zoom in on the specific realm and flesh out other settlements. You can't possibly flesh out every single thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially on a map like, ideally to also give space to your narrator for stuff, or your game master to develop stuff. But yeah, zooming in, and also whatever we end up talking about, a few things in depth, creating maps and detailed resources for game masters to use. I think I'm really interested in doing that within the sort of confines of the space or that we set for ourselves for this kind of book, right? Because I feel like one could keep writing forever about fantastical and fictional things. So whatever our word limit is and what we decide for each clan, yeah, we want to make the most of it and just make it a nice zoom in of the things we're interested in talking about, and to help game masters. The most important thing is it's still a game, right? To give them a lot of material for adventuring in that land with and feel confident that they know it inside and out.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, another thing I think we haven't really touched on yet is like a timeline, right? We haven't really published a timeline yet.
Yeah, and so I have some reasons for that. We have some reasons for that, though, right?
Yeah.
The fact that in some other fantasy worlds, you have the whole script and wizards and ancient whatever people keeping track and historians keeping track of stuff, but much like real life Celts that it's based on, the Valak didn't really have a writing system. I mean, they had a writing system, right? There was a kind of writing system before, but it was what's it called?
I'm not even sure if that was before, dude. I think that was still post Roman, perhaps, or maybe the same time.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, that's true. Ogam was still created like in the 4th and 6th, like after the 4th century AD, after connecting with the Romans. Although some people believe it's older, I guess. Yeah. Well, in any case, there wasn't a strong writing system of the Valaks until.
Yeah, but primarily it's an oral history, right? We're talking poems, songs, tales.
Yeah. So actually putting the so-and-so years is kind of difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was thinking about this earlier, actually. Like literally today, before the stream, I was wondering if we did do a timeline, would we put numbers on it? Would we have like BR before Raxian invasion and then post Raxian invasion? Would it be from like a Raxian perspective, this timeline? Would they have the years since the Raxian invasion? Like then they would have years, right? You'd go to their calendar system, whatever year they have for Ataraxia was founded, probably be the 0, and it'd be like this happened then, this happened then, this happened then. And then you're gone.
Well, yeah, I would say it would almost certainly be that. Like that section would almost certainly be written by like a Raxian historian like Portia or Kato. Talking about the history as much as they like a Raxian historian or storyteller that's really interested in Valak history and Raxian history, and then they would just talk about a bunch of stuff, but like just kind of place them roughly.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be like something happened in this kind of time thing, and something else happened there, and then
like in the So I think that's exactly how it would be. So it would be like the age of during the age of darkness, then the age of heroes or sorrows or whatever, or the age of the everyone's, and then after that they would call it the age of whatever.
All right, dude, we get the point.
Yeah, whatever. And there's another age, and there's the age of the unicorn.
And there's the age of the ages, and there's the end of ages, and then the start of ages. Yeah.
The age of the ages. Just keep on going. Just keep it rolling.
Okay. What else haven't we done? I think really.
Let's hear. Another thing we haven't done, if we're talking about more mechanical stuff, we've talked about professions, and the jobs and so on. Mm-hmm. We haven't talked about specific clan takes on each of those things either, which is like a game space we've talked about, right? And opening things up a little bit.
Yes.
Like the difference between a Valak merchant or whatever, Valak so and so versus a Raxian so-so, or even a pen bathe or a pen dreg, whatever. Like if those have differences, that's a thing we should explore. I don't know if it's actually something we end up fully fleshing out, but it's something we should definitely at least consider.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay, cool. I think those are the biggest things. I mean, they're pretty big topics, right? The Fey Courts is enough to.
The Fey Courts is that's almost like it's or its own book.
Its own book, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
But we'll stick with that for now. Yeah. I mean, it could be 5 books. Who knows?
All right. Now I'm gonna do the art attack thing, which you don't know what that is. I
the
guess.
What?
Art attack. Did you?
Art attack.
Art attack. Yeah, I think it was a kids TV show in the UK about doing things with art. Wait, is it Art Attack that did this, or is it Blue Peter? I forget, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Here's one I made earlier.
You're saying a bunch of stuff nobody knows about.
Yeah, I know.
All these British
so
things.
Shout out if you know what Art Attack is. Shout out in the chat if you know what Blue Peter is.
Yeah, that sounds obscene. I don't even know. I don't even want to
Blue Peter.
Yeah.
Blue Peter. Yeah. Anyway, here's what I made earlier. So I had like a few ideas that I wanted to brainstorm with you and get your thoughts on, and then we can expand them together now brainstorming. So I wanted to divide, because the irony of source books, right, is that they're meant to be for the game master, but the players love them too because you put player content in there, and people want to make new character options, right? But character options are just like gold dust. Like, why do people love character options, Kurt and chat? What is it?
Well, I have some thoughts on that. But I guess my thoughts, which I can share now, are the fact that when you're playing a role-playing game, you're doing a bit of both self-insertion and, it's a role-playing game. It's a fantasy role-playing game. So obviously fulfilling your fantasies about what you are or what you aspire to be can be a lot of fun. Or playing in a space where you're not, what you normally aren't, So it can either be aspirational or it could be wish fulfillment. So giving players the options to do either of those things in order to fill their time in a fun way for them is important.
Yeah, I think it's because it's the role playing and then it's the game part, right? Like the role playing part is very malleable. You can imagine any character that you want, and you can play that character, but you really want the game to reflect it too, right? So if you have a concept for an idea and that isn't in the game for you to use, well, then it's not in the game, is it? It's just you role playing it. It's just the RP and no G part. So people like to have a lot of G elements, game elements, so that they can reflect what they're RPing, right? So I'm dividing my ideas between player content and GM content. And this is us now planning a future source book for our Celtic fantasy world. Player content ideas. I'm enamored with your idea of new takes on our professions, right? New takes on our professions.
Yeah. Now to clarify, if you are joining the stream and you're not familiar with the Legends of Avallen, Avallen is set up a little bit differently from something like Dungeons and Dragons, where in D&D you kind of choose your class at first and you're a wizard, and if you want to do something else, you could become something else, but you take a class. But the idea in Avallen is that you start from humble origins, you just have a job, and then you become an adventurer of some sort, right? And from there you take on a class, 1 of 4, and then from the classes, then you could start walking down a legendary path. So it's almost like you have like 3. Your character is actually 3 kind of mini classes combined, right?
Yeah, exactly. So for professions, we have like the alchemist, the bard, crafter, merchant, priest, scavenger, scribe, socialite, tamer, and thief. Yeah. And then later on, then you chose if you want to learn how to fight or if you want to learn how to cast magic. And then you take your legendary path, which is like your druids or your slayers, that kind of thing. So you had this idea that, okay, we have an alchemist. And if you're a Raxian alchemist, or if you're a Pencoed alchemist, or a Penbayad alchemist, you have the same abilities. But your idea was, what if they were different, right? What if we had a specific kind of alchemists? What if we had a specific kind of crafters? What if we had a potter, or a smith, or a architect, right?
Right. so fleshing it out a bit and giving people more options to which to imagine the character and have different skills that they can mess around with um, whenever they create a new character. It can be a lot of fun. And also helps the game master too, because the thing about classes is the more sort of class options and things you have for your players, that's more things you have for your non-player characters, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And I think, as we said before, the extra play options helps with the G part of the RPG. It's like, well, currently in the game, oh, I'm a crafter, but what if you were a potter, and you could actually
yeah.
be a potter, right? And you get to say I'm a potter. It's a type of crafter, but it's a potter, and I have this particular potting ability. I don't even know what that would be. Well, maybe we'll get there in another stream, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think the important thing about this too is obviously we have to choose the professions that we think can be sort of gamified, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and
you won't
also
necessarily
possibly relevant to adventuring as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like we won't necessarily make. Here's the thing: in regular life, waiters are very important. We know that.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily something that requires a lot of skill. You know, you can learn to be a waiter after a week of training at your local Chili's, but it's not necessarily something that. But being a potter is a real craft that existed in the old world and was super fucking important. It was important not just for like preserving things, but also in terms of designing pots was also important for telling history and as gifts and so on. So and I think we forget that in our modern world sometimes, because you know, if you want to buy a pot, you just go down to your local fucking. What do you have? What's your equivalent of a Big Lots in Cardiff?
B&Q or IKEA, I guess. Yeah, B&Q.
Sure, you go to your local B&Q and you pick up a pot. But these things had to be made by people once upon a time, and it was a real fucking art. And I think we want to find the things that are really interesting that maybe people wouldn't think that we aren't sure about in our modern life, but when we describe it and develop it, people are like, oh yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I want to be a potter.
And then we have to imagine what abilities a potter might have that would be useful for adventures, right?
Yeah, that would make you want to be a potter, right? And take that profession. And that's a challenge. We don't know if it'll be a potter because we're still so early in the incipient stages of developing this. But yeah, it's fun to think about though. Like, what would it mean to make someone want to be a potter?
Make a potter.
I think that's cool. Yeah, I think it'd be fun. Yeah. And of course, every other person that makes a potter, their name's gonna be Harry. You just fucking know it. You just fucking know it. That Anyway.
Okay. So then part of it as well is because of market forces. Let's say our campaign book is 5e compatible, as well as compatible with Legends of Avallen. So you can play this with D20 games as well as Legends of Avallen, which is a card-based system. And I'd want the source book to probably be the same thing. And thinking of what things that we can offer to Dungeons and Dragons that isn't already there is very much our humble origins. Like you said before, in Avallen you start as just this humble profession and then you choose your class. Well, we could add that into 5e by saying you start at level 0, right? Instead of level 1. And that level 0 is this humble profession that you take, and then after your first adventure, then you become level 1, then you choose your class, right? So we can give that same experience to D&D players.
And we have to do some research, and if someone in the chat knows whether or not it's already a thing in 5e, please let us know. But also, I think in the core rule book, they have backgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the way backgrounds work is backgrounds are usually just like, this is what I used to be before I became an adventurer. But what we try to do is be like, no, you're gonna play through that part first, and then you're gonna choose your class. You're gonna choose your class.
Yeah, my background, I was a carpenter, but no, we want you to play the carpenter and to have a carpenting ability because of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but still make it fun. That's always the important part, right?
Cool.
That it's.
And then the next thing, and this ties actually into backgrounds, is another thing we haven't got in Avallen right now is we have the idea of, okay, you can be from one of the clans, you can be from the Penlevy, you can be from the Pencowan, but it's just a note on your character sheet. It doesn't have anything associated with it. And me as a naive first-time designer, I thought that would be enough, but I think I didn't appreciate what I just said earlier, which is the RP and then the G. There was the RP part was there, but there was no G part there. And I think people really want the choices to matter. So choosing which clan you belong to should make a difference for your character. not just role playing wise, but mechanically too. So I would like, my dream would be for there to be some kind of mechanical benefit for different origins that you choose for your character. And
Or an option.
You go on, sorry.
Or an option to have that benefit, right? Like,
Yes.
because you don't want to obviously make obsolete all the stuff from an original book.
Well, it'd be in addition to, right?
Addition, yeah.
It's not obsolete too, yeah.
Well, I mean, would it be an addition? Would there be a drawback? Because like that's
no, why would you have a drawback?
You could sometimes. Well, okay, we'll see how it develops, but I'm okay with it. So you're just suggesting that it just adds on. You become a Pendrake, and then this is the Pendrake ability kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It'd be a small thing, but I want to try and look into that space and see what we can come up with at the least.
Sure.
Yeah, and then for that, I would imagine there'd be the 5 clans, of course, and then there would be someone. I remember I'm calling it wild, but it'd be someone who's not from the 5 clans or just doesn't want to associate with them for some reason. And bear in mind, this is where I'm calling it culture at the moment. This is where you were raised, right? Just because you're raised in the Pencower doesn't mean you actually are Pencowered, right? But that's the culture that you were raised in. So there'll be 5 clans, there'll be the Wilds, there'll be Rexian Highborn, Rexian Lowborn, and then Elsewhere. That's currently what I'm playing with. What is that? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9 options. It's probably too many. But we could always narrow it down later. Yeah.
Sure.
And then I was thinking, again, I don't know if this would be too much or if it could be possible, but then later on, maybe not necessarily level 0, but maybe later on in the game, you can choose who you're devoted to. So you can't choose where you grew up, but you can choose where you want to spend your energy, right?
Sure.
And that could be to one of the 5 gods. It could be to Ataraxia, which is the Rexian religion, or it could be undevoted, right? You could be not committed.
Nothing.
Yeah. Should be like nihilism.
Yeah.
There should be a.
Yeah, no, you're a typical Reddit user. Okay. I'm a typical Reddit user, so. That's cool. So, basically, giving players a way of looking, to inhabit their characters that's faithful to the lore that we've been creating. Yeah, that's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But then I guess I was wondering, because our gods don't really interact so much with mortals, what would you gain from being like devoted to the Ever Father, for example? But I was also thinking maybe if we do this at a later level, for example, then at that point the characters are becoming heroes, and maybe then it's okay for them to have some kind of connection with a god. You know what I mean?
I mean, you have places where the hero, obviously in adventures, sometimes the gods will send an avatar or even themselves try to inhabit something and communicate. But I mean, spirits and being sort of connected with their court can be a thing, right? So you may not be chatting with the Everfather, but you might be talking to his fae or whatever, or be more connected to his court, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And that could give you benefits, and they could bestow gifts upon you or boons, that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like that. Fae gifts and boons, for example. Yeah. Cool. Okay, awesome. That's the play content ideas. New takes and professions, level 0 for 5th edition, and then choosing the culture that you grew up in, and then choosing the philosophy in a way, or something that you're devoted to, or the force that you're devoted to. Then for game master ideas, what did I write here? I can't even remember. Deep lore that is given in a usable manner that inspires adventure ideas. Right, so this is the stuff that we want to give the game master, tools that we want to give them, resources. And when I wrote this, I was thinking of, for example, the Spriggan lore that we came up with the other day.
Sure.
Where... where is the final... Oh yeah, Stream Ideas Realized. Here we go. This is some behind the scenes stuff. This is like the final version of that thing. And something I came up with there was this idea of different tiers of knowledge that characters might find. One being common knowledge, which they can just find by asking people, or that the characters themselves might know. uncommon knowledge that requires an expert, and the characters would only know that themselves. When I say characters, I mean players. The player characters might only know that if they're an expert that's also local to the topic of question. And then rare knowledge, this is the kind of stuff that only experts wish they knew. And then taking that idea of his knowledge and then applying them, even just a simple thing like a monster, like one creature, the Spriggan, we can have a whole tale about it, go deep about like its appearance, its behavior, and then talk about common knowledge, uncommon knowledge, rare knowledge. That gives you lore, deep lore behind the Spriggan that the characters can either know themselves or then find out, or then go on a quest to uncover, and then give you the character sheet for the creature itself. So not just like a description of it and a character sheet and a little bit else. I want to go quality over quantity, you know what I mean? Like maybe our bestiary is only 10, 15 creatures, but each of them has like an in-depth like bit about here's everything you need to want to know about this creature, and here's all the things you can tie into adventures for it as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this: when you put the lore underneath the GM content ideas, there's a couple ways to do it, right? Like, even though it's lore that mostly the game masters needs to develop their adventures and have knowledge, players love reading about that stuff too. So, do you imagine that it's like if you're a player, read on but avoid bits, or don't read it if you're only a player and rely on the game master to convey things to their player base when they play? Like, what's your preference for that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the way that it will end up, for example, is when we say these player content ideas, I imagine this will be like the first part of the book, right? And it will be introductory things. So then when we talk about the cultures of the 5 clans that the players can choose from, when we talk about that so we say we talk about the Penkawa, the southern tribe, the southern clan. We give the kind of base information that we have in the campaign book and the rule book, go deeper in some sections, and there, for example, we might mention that the Spriggan is a creature that's found in the Penkawa Otherworld. It sometimes spills out near to Penkawa ruins and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned it there and you hinted it there. And then you say, I don't know, if we reference a page number for the Game Master, but then it'll be then we'll have the Spriggan in a later section. That's the Game Master section that will go into all the details. So we want to hint at the world and let the players know what's in it to be discovered and to play with, but we don't want to give them everything, of course. That I think that has to be in a separate section. Yeah. Does that make sense?
I think it does. My instinct, though, and I'd be curious, yeah, really, if you're in the chat and you have thoughts about this is something, because I think this is really interesting to talk about. I think that's a totally valid way of doing it. I, as a player, though, I almost would prefer it if, like, most of the lore I got as kind of like this general information, because that helps me sort of as role player too, right, to know about stuff. And then if there are details, then that goes to another part of the book, like secrets only for the game master or something like that.
Well, yeah, but that's hard though, isn't it? Because so for example, for the Spriggan, I've got here common knowledge. A Spriggan is a giant, grotesque person with a huge head, and some other details, and a part of a story, right? And this is common knowledge. But I say for common knowledge is information that can be gathered from any person or source local to the topic, as well as any experts on the topic. So I guess like maybe this is okay to put into the Penkawa lore section, right? For players to read. And then maybe if you're from the Pen Levy, then maybe you shouldn't read the Penkawa section, or you should read it and then forget about it as a character, right? But then when it comes to uncommon knowledge, that's only for experts. And if the player character is an expert on fiends, then the GM can give them this knowledge, but I don't think they should be able to read it in the book unless they deliberately go into the Game Master section. Like, if you're a player and you just love reading all the lore, like you just said you did, then there's nothing stopping you from going into the other sections and reading them, right? Like,
sure.
How are you imagining that it would be structured then? What's an alternate way?
Let's see here. So if I'm going to, let me go back to our outline here. So if we're so I'm a player, right? So and my game master says to me, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can read through this book or whatever, but don't read the last section." I imagine I can read all the player content ideas just as you talked about them.
Yeah.
And then there's like a tour of like the different realms of
Yeah.
the different clan lands, rather. And I want to be able to know everything about this world if I just read everything, right? In a very general stuff.
Yeah.
But occasionally there will be things like legend says that the Spriggans are there, whatever it might be, and here's a poem about it or something.
Yeah, 100%.
And then at the back of the book, like the last 100 pages, it says like everyone's secrets or something like that, and then that's also organized in a similar way, but it's almost like referential footnotes for things for the deep lore that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm arguing is the sort of common and uncommon knowledge, so to speak, of different areas and towns should kind of be front loaded a little bit.
Yeah.
But then the really dark and deep secrets are kind of its own section in the back.
Okay.
I mean, is that identical to what you're talking? Is that a little bit different?
I think almost. I think maybe it really is just a disagreement of where the uncommon knowledge would go. You're saying common and uncommon at the front, and just rare knowledge at the back. And I'm saying common at the front and uncommon and rare at the back. I think that's all. Really.
I think so. Yeah, because I think part of that too is by putting different tiers there, you want your players to have a lot of stuff to read too in your world, because it's fun for them as well to get involved with it. And when you read something, you don't necessarily remember everything you read either, especially in the middle of the game.
Yeah,
you might just be like, oh yeah, I kind of maybe I remember that. There are rule lawyerly players that can remember, or people with photographic memory that can remember every fucking thing. But even then, it's still up to the game master it's always going to be a game, and part of gaming too is that, right? That the knowledge that you have is not like you said before, the knowledge you have is not necessarily the knowledge that the characters have. I think
you persuaded me. I think you're right. I think when I say uncommon knowledge should be reserved for experts, my intent was I'd want the players to interact with NPCs or do some research or reward player characters that have expertise in that topic because of their profession or because of their class, for example.
Yeah.
But I should also reward the player that's devoted to reading all the books, right? And they're an expert themselves, right? So that should count too.
Yeah, I think so. And then really the sort of rare knowledge are basically the adventure hooks, the game master adventure hooks.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah.
So as long as we're on the same page there, again, things are still developing, and we'll figure out what that actually means for us. But that's, to me, the fun way to do it, so that there's a lot of stuff for everybody.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so then, GM context is the deep lore. It's given in a usable manner that inspires adventure ideas. Cool, agreed. Then, practical examples that can be adapted to own adventures. And when I say practical examples, I mean, I guess ideas for quests, right? Like here, the Everfather is the god of mountings, crafting, war, and community. And these are the things that he loves, but how can you use that for an adventure? Here's an example of the Everfather as a quest giver, essentially. And here's the idea of the Everfather as maybe a villainous character that's working against something that the players want to stop somehow.
That's good. Actually, you've just sort of set off something else too in my mind about what we're writing, which is like the stuff with the Everones and the fairy courts and so on.
Yeah.
Almost certainly in the book, there should only be a bunch of common knowledge, and then the uncommon and rare knowledge should be for the game master primarily, right? I feel like, and I don't know if that I'm wrong-headed for thinking that, but a lot of the face stuff, we should still talk about it in general terms for the players, but that's really the space where like the game master is gonna like pull things out and
interesting.
I don't know.
So in my mind, like I consider the Spriggan as like part of the other world as well, right? So I bet you're doing a divide here between, I guess, like Fey politics and like creatures that can reason and create.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Yeah, because the players are like, if the players are primarily mortal, then they should have limited insight into the realm. Like almost by its nature, the fairy courts and the other world are secret. Like it has a lot of secrets, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's more interesting to keep those secrets with the game master than like sort of mortal realm stuff, which should be a bit more general, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Is what my instinct says.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. So here's a question. So earlier I gave the example of the Everfather as a quest giver, which that obviously makes sense and it's fine. But then, how would you feel about the Everfather being an antagonist? Does that even make sense in our world?
Yeah, it can. Like, in the same way that like Zeus was an antagonist in certain story, a hero in some, a help in others, and a fucking philandering antagonist in others. Yeah, I think you can think about ways for players to. I mean, we should at least consider ways for players to run afoul of like the gods, right? Of a given god,
yeah, that makes sense.
Or their agendas,
and as you said before, like given the Fey Court's motivations, well, the gods have motivations too, right?
Yeah.
And they were once mortal, so they might still have grudges, they might still have passions. Yeah,
exactly.
They're still fallible.
The Everfather's still in love with his ex-wife, the Evermother, and anyone who courts her too hard is gonna suffer his wrath or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. And then on top of that, obviously we want to do maps, I guess, like actual like locations.
Yeah. I fucking love maps.
Look at this guy. Fucking loves maps.
I'm all about it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna spend every day just fucking spilling coffee and then making outlines, and then that's gonna be a new outline for an island.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I put for Game Masters was tables. Everyone loves tables, right?
For some reason. Okay, I don't particularly care for tables personally.
Really? Yeah.
But you're right. It does seem like people love tables, especially if you look at old D&D supplements or old role-playing supplements, or even some modern ones. Even modern D&D, there's just like shit ton of tables. I don't know. Do you like tables?
I put tables in the Legends of Avallen core rulebook. There's a whole table here on how to make an Avallen quest with playing cards. You just pull, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards. You get your patron motivation, your player, blah 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 blah. Make a quest. It's awesome. I think that player tables do two things. One, they can actually be used as their intent, which is to create something random to either make something for a GM that just wants something now, or to inspire them. But I think another thing that they do that's really useful that I've only come to appreciate more recently, perhaps, is they give a good, like, Overton window. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. Like an indication of the environment and the kind of world you live in. Like, for example, looking at this table here, you can see alchemist, bard, crafter, merchant, all these kind of things. And then you see garden, smith, shop, shrine, slums, teacher. There's just a list of different things that you can find in towns and cities in Avallen. And that's useful, right? Just be able to glance at that and seeing, like, holistically what this kind of world is about by just looking at some words.
Yeah.
I think that has some use to it, even if you're not using the table as a random generator. Just having a list of words in a block. About a setting or about something gives you an idea, a concept of the kind of things that you can grab from. Like I said, the Overton window. Does that make sense for what I'm talking about? Using that expression?
I feel like Overton window is a specific politics thing.
Is it? It is. Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so if you know what the Overton window is, that's talking about the spectrum of acceptability of government policies, right? And that can shift from time to time what's acceptable. But I think really what you're talking about. So in a roleplay game, in a fantasy roleplay game where everything's in your brain, anything's possible, right?
Your boundaries. There we go. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So your boundaries. So creating anything's possible, but just by delimiting it a little bit and having some boundaries can be very helpful to know what the feel of a thing should be.
Yeah, I guess another thing is it's like a sample tasting board as well. You know, when the food comes out, it's got all the little different bits in it, or like a drinking
Like a
tasting
true-
board as well. You can just like
Oh.
try a little bit of everything and see what's going on, like where. Yeah. Anyway, so tables good. Yes, I like tables.
Table's good.
I think tables are useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I've sorry, quick tangent. My
Yeah.
favorite table of all time
Yeah.
in any role-playing game.
Tell me
Do
your
you have a
favorite table
of all
of
time?
all time, Kurt.
So again, I tell myself. So I started playing D&D when I was like second edition. When I was like 8 or 9 years old,
Yeah.
and I was obsessed with the Deck of Many Things table.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. I think they made a whole book called The Deck of Many Things now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might have been an adventure. I haven't gotten that book or seen it. If you liked it, let us know in the chat. But yeah, it was just like a fucking. It just had like 52 things, and they were wild. I don't know if you remember things. Like the one was like, you fucking get annihilated. Or
Yeah,
some shit like
yeah, you
that.
just die, right? You just
Yeah,
you're
it's the best.
disintegrated. You're gone.
Yeah. So and the thing is, it's such a rare fucking thing.
Yeah. So here's the question: did you ever use the Deck of Many Things, Kurt?
I think I did when I played with my
really?
my family. I think there was one time. But you know, the funny thing is, even though it's a big table and it's random,
Yeah.
you're like hoping to get a thing. So you know, when you're like 9 or 10, you're like, oh no, here it is. Like you're trying to put a different card at the top to make sure it's the fun thing.
Were you hoping to be annihilated? Were you like secretly curious?
No, I was always the dungeon master, so I was hoping to not annihilate my party.
Yeah.
But it was quite exciting too.
Yeah.
so.
Okay. It's tangent. So I don't know. Let me hear this out. As a game master, maybe I'm too naive or lovely, but I'm always afraid my player characters are going to die, and I'm always
Really?
scared for them. Yeah. But then
wait.
I feel like
As a game
player,
master?
yeah, as a game master, yeah. But as a player, I feel like sometimes you kind of want your character to die, not because you want them to die, but because there's like the romance of the heroic sacrifice, right? And
Yeah, and also the also as a game master, you want to enforce that there's consequences for failure, right? Like you're right. You don't want people to fail, but as a game master, you want to be a fair judge, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you want when things go awry, you want to reinforce that. But as a player, we get very attached to our characters, which is always a funny. Like there's that whole cliche about like player spends 2 weeks developing his character's backstory, and then he dies in like 30 minutes in the game.
we got a hobo behind you. Says Liz would disagree. Yeah, a hobo is one of our playtesters. Thank you, hobo, for your service, for helping out with the Fairy Queen. And yeah, Liz would disagree. Yeah. So, hobo, how do you feel? Wait, hobo, you play Selwyn, don't you? How would you feel if Selwyn died? I guess does it depend on the circumstance, I suppose. Yeah.
Wait, did Lysera die? And
No, almost. She actually, I can tell you, last session, she got tricked. Oh, maybe I don't want to spoil things, but she got tricked by an NPC and was almost stabbed to death. Yeah.
How big?
Yeah, go on.
How big is your playtest group typically?
It's between 3 and 6, depending on who turns up. Yeah.
Wonderful. So that's a funny thing to different.
Hey, Dale's here. Hi, Dale.
What up, Dale? We're just talking about the Deck of Many Things as a small sidetrack. Real quick, I pulled up the Deck of Many Things from first edition D&D, and some of them are just so wild. Like one of them is Throne. You open this card and you gain Charisma of 18 plus a small keep, and then another one is like defeat the next monster you meet to gain 1 level. So gain 10,000 XP or draw 2 more cards from the deck. There's just like all these sort of fucking random things in the Deck of Many Things, and I was obsessed with that as a young D&D player. So I see the value of tables for that reason too in game design, because you never know what's going to fire up people's imaginations. So just having a table with a bunch of different things is very valuable. So thank you.
So to cap off the last conversation about player characters dying, Hobo in the chat says, it would depend how he feels if Selwyn died. If he got the heroic death, it would be cool. But if he died starving in the forest, it'd be kind of lame. And that is possible. Sure. So yeah, I agree with that, I guess.
But you know, that's if you read enough fiction, you'll also find that a lame death, so to speak, can also have its own kind of drama and tragedy and beauty to it. So I think with any given, you can turn any sort of point or turn of events into a satisfying narrative, I think.
Yeah,
it can be hard.
But that sounds like the game masters, like, kind of making starvation, like, dramatic. Yeah, that sounds difficult.
Right? Like, you feel the hunger pains welling up in your stomach. You feel the bloat start to distend your bowels. It's like, oh, fuck, this is fucked up. You have visions of the Evermother calling to you. I don't know. I guess you'd rather have a heroic. As a Valak, maybe starving to death is not a very noble a noble way to go.
Okay, so earlier I made like a pseudo contents page for our sourcebook, and I wanted to get your thoughts and ideas on it, and I guess also like the ordering of it and the topics, and then if we could add more to it or details, that's cool too.
Yeah. And to clarify again, if you're new, if you just entered the chat, Dale or whoever may have entered the chat, we're talking about the book that the next campaign we're working on. And where does this start? I'm looking at the document now. Is it under?
Starts under professions.
Profession. Okay, so new. So this is what you're suggesting. So sometimes instead of professions. Okay.
Yeah. So I imagine they'll probably start with like, I guess there'd be an introduction actually. So I lied. It should have an introduction, right?
Yeah.
Introduction to Avallen, and that would probably, because this is a source book, it would give you an intro to the world, and then also the kind of tales you might want to tell in Avallen, or the kind of tales that Avallen's good at telling, right?
Right. Now here's another question related to the introduction, but possibly safe for other places.
Yeah.
I do think whenever I used to read books in the past that I liked, I always appreciated it when you knew kind of when things were happening.
When,
so to speak. So this source book takes place after, I guess, the Fairy Queen.
Dude, I've been umming and ahhing about it so much. Like because so there's two ways to think about it, at least in my mind. There's the creator lore centric way of thinking about it, and then there's the business way of thinking about it, right? The creator lore centric way of me tells me, well, Against the Fairy Queen's about to come out, and the source book will come out after that. Fairy Queen's in the past. It's now established lore and canon, although we don't know what happens because that's up to the player characters, the game master, right? But it's a story that we've told, and so it should be in the past in the source book as something you could reference to, right? As something that's happened. Although it's difficult to reference to it, really, because, again, we don't know what happened, so maybe that's an argument against that. The business side of me says, nope, the source book should be set before the events of the Fairy Queen, like just before, probably. Because I imagine when the source book is released, a lot of people will want to get the campaign book as well, and they'll use them in tandem, right? And you don't want to read spoilers to the Fairy Queen in the source book that your players might be using.
Sure.
And you want the source book to set up the campaign book, really, to support it, right?
Sure.
So, yeah. What do you think about that?
Sure.
And what do you think about that, Dale and Hobo?
And also casters. Dale said maps always include maps. Yes, we were talking about that earlier about having a shit ton of tables and maps in this book.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't love tables and maps? I see what you're saying. Well, here's the thing, right? I think as long as you say in the beginning that the events in this book take place after Against the Fairy Queen.
Sure.
That's probably okay.
Yeah, but then how do you deal with it? Because what if they're playing the campaign, or if they play the campaign? The repercussions, I guess, not necessarily huge, but like, do we include in the source book that there were heroes that fought the Fairy Queen? Like, do we mention that? I guess.
Yeah. So I guess or to make it even more specific, where does this sort of wedding of Gadok happen, right? Of the Penbaith wedding.
Yeah.
How do we describe an event like that? Did it happen in the past, and then it was interrupted by Ithagir's wind, and it was remedied by some traveling heroes, or is it take place before that and the impending wedding of I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's hard. I do actually do want some input from people in the chat now. Like, as fans of Avallen, and like, how would you feel if in a year or 2 years' time we release a source book and it's set in previously to the campaign book? So things, how do I want to say this? Do you want the world lore to progress in time? Do you want to see updates? Do you want to know what happens next from what's happened previously? Yeah. Or do you just want more details about the world, and the time frame doesn't really matter? Yeah, I really want to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think I think that, and of course, again, please talk in the chat if you have a strong opinion about this. Because we have like the Care of the Borderlands, which are the free adventures,
yeah,
and then the I guess the Fairy Queen. I am very inclined towards making it happen after it gets the Fairy Queen, and then just put a note in the beginning like, "Hey, if you haven't played against Fairy Queen yet, this takes place after that."
But yeah, you just said that, right? You've already said that.
Yeah,
I know that's what your inclination, but why is that your inclination? That's what you haven't said yet.
So it's my inclination because a lot of the, how do you say, the best way to get into a roleplay game is just by playing it, right?
Sure.
And we've sort of set up the world so that you could just start with the core rule book, and you can start with the and just the adventures and the Fairy Queen, and you will have a full campaign experience.
Yeah, but say you just got the source book, and then you want to adventure in Avallen, and then you pick up Care on the Borderlands, and then you find out it's set before the source book that you're reading, right? Not afterwards. Like, you think the source book is like a springboard, right?
Sure.
Anyway, Hobo says.
So okay.
Yeah, go on. You want to read what Hobo says?
Oh, good.
Okay.
So it's.
Hobo says it's hard. Like, I could see because it ends at a certain level. It's an important event, but it wasn't something all of Avallen was fighting against, or some people would know of the event, but not everyone. Yeah, so Hobo's saying that the scale of Against the Fairy Queen isn't... the repercussions of it could impact all of Avallen, but it wasn't like a huge war. It wasn't a huge event that everyone would know about, so maybe it is not so much of an issue that we said it afterwards, because it won't have much impact on the lore book, for example, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So what were you going to say?
One way to do it would be if we were to have like sort of like we said the common and uncommon knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that we focus on basically making. We could make the core rule or most of the source book concurrent with the beginning of Legends of Avallen, or so to speak, in terms of the timeline of the core rule book. But in the Dungeon Master section, have like the sort of potential changes that they can render post Against the Fairy Queen as like the deep lore, right?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea and a good way of handling it. And I've just made up my mind while you were saying that, and it had nothing to do with what you said. I'm so sorry.
Sure. Go ahead.
I made up my mind because of Overwatch.
Okay, all right, tell me more.
Freaking Overwatch, dude. Overwatch was released, I don't know, I think it's like 10 years ago now, or 8 years ago or something, right? Yeah. And one of the Overwatch trailers was the recall, right? So that a brief Overwatch lore. Overwatch was this like government organization, global government organization that fights like problems in the world, right? These super soldiers that include Genji and Tracer, all those characters. All the characters in Overwatch were part of that group, right? And then that group got disbanded and separated, and then the world went to crap. And then later on, one of the members of it, who's the hopeful one, it's the monkey, Winston, issues the recall and resummons the heroes back together again to try and tackle the problems of the world, right? That was the trailer of the game, before the game even started. It's been 8 years, nothing's happened.
Okay.
They haven't got together yet, they haven't fought anything, they haven't solved any problems, nothing has progressed in the lore in 8 years, and it's painful.
So it's like a writer. So like a writer said this is gonna be a great idea, and then they fired them and just never revisited it or something.
Pretty much, yes. And
Okay.
that has pained me as a consumer and as a fan of the franchise. The fact that my characters never progressed or did anything, and so I've now just internally vowed to never inflict that upon anyone else in the world. If you're a fan of Avallen, things should move forward and you should see things updating. That's now happening. I'm settled. So.
So wait, so what did you settle on for Avallen? How are you settling that with Avallen then? Does that mean
I'm going to say that all products released out will released in chronological time frames. So if a book is released later, the other books would have come before it, and the lore would have been settled already, if that makes sense. Unless the book is specifically a prologue for some reason, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dale's saying that Dale's feeling that after the Fairy Queen would be best. Maybe something from the Fairy Queen leads into the next campaign. Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? Like I think there's ways to demarcate or to indicate that things, are kind of specific Fairy Queen references as like little notes or in the GM section. But yeah, I think we're all in agreement here. Let's avoid that pain of not feeling like things would. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah. Anyway, still talking about the contents of the book. Introduction, intro to the world, the kind of tales that can set in Avallen, and then the fact that it's set after the Fairy Queen campaign book. But spoilers in the GM section, so players shouldn't worry about it, right?
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Yeah. There would just be something like the only thing that would be tricky are sort of there's not that many like big story points, but like for example, the first scenario in the Fairy Queen is a wedding, and we might have to say how that resolves because they're important people in the pen-based section, right? Pen-based section.
Yeah, see, that's still awkward though, isn't it? It's like that's hard to avoid in the player section when those people get married, right?
Well, but
then it releases any tension when you're playing the campaign. Maybe okay. Let me revise. Maybe there's an alternative, right?
Yeah.
That campaign books should be sequential, right? Yeah. But a source book is something different.
Book isn't a campaign book. I don't necessarily think that's true. And again, I point to.
I didn't say it was true. I'm just saying that could be an approach, right?
No, I think we.
Oh, you've disappeared, by the way. Oh no, we've lost Kurt. I'm sure he will return in due course. Okay. While Kurt is gone, I will talk about the next section. So, after introducing the world, I think obviously then you want to create your character, right? It should be character creation next, and that's where we'll be talking about our new profession ideas and rules of adapting our humble origins on level 0 into 5th edition. And then it will be an introduction to the cultures of Avallen. And the dream is that these different things will have mechanical benefits, right? So we will have a Fairy Queen spirited away Spirit Bonds. Yeah. I'm hoping it'll come back because I'm simultaneously trying to find out what's happened to the poor chap while trying to talk to you guys to make sure you're not to keep you entertained, as it were. And that is difficult. But let me message dearest Kurt, because this really is a two-man band. Yo, did your internet die? Did your internet die? Anyway, yeah. So I think my dream situation would be that you would want to choose. You'd be able to choose the culture that your character grew up in, the culture they were raised in, and there should be some kind of mechanical benefit to that. So you get to choose your clan, and there's something to it. Hey, you're back. Welcome back, dude.
I was just talking to nobody for like 10 minutes.
Oh, really? Sweet. Me too.
Where do we end up?
Nothing. Just move into the next section. I'm just thinking about how The next section will be character creation. That's where we want our new profession rules and find the indentations of the humble origins, level 0, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess. So, what else can we say about that? I guess is the first thing. Should that be the first thing? Maybe that's not the first thing. Maybe the first thing should be the cultures, right? Maybe the player wants to read more about the world first before they choose their profession.
Yeah, I almost feel like because we're talking about the character creation,
Yeah.
and because you already have the core rule book for most of the professions, right?
Yes.
So I think talking about the culture first. I mean, we'll have to figure it out, but it could be that each of the culture sections has specific details about professions or whatever relating to that area of the world.
True. I hadn't considered that. So, like, the Penavunk might have, obviously, it would have like a little bit of history. It would have culture. It would have some locations that are detailed. Other worlds, and then maybe it would have professions too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think. I mean, would we limit the potter to just the Penavunk, right? Or the carpenter just the Penavunk? Like,
no, I mean, again, there's ways we could write around that. There could be something like potters are very common in the Pendrake because of this. However, you could feel free to be from another clan and who studied in these lands and getting these skills, or
sure. But when we're talking about character options, I feel like we want them grouped into one section, right? Like, if here's the professions, that's that. I don't think you'd want to look through. If you want to choose a profession, I don't think you want to look through each clan to see them all. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Maybe. Anyway, I think you can kind of go either way. I think there's pros and cons to doing it each way, because depending on the tone that we go with, like especially for a source book, if it's very, you're right, it's more practical just have them sort of bunch together. But if the way it's written is a bit more narrative driven, like I could see us also talking about things like, a profession in each clan section, and then that's where you like drop. By the way, here's an optional profession for you. It can kind of I think it could go either way, but I don't know if we have to necessarily choose it now.
I also like, and now that I've kind of rearranged this, I realize that this is kind of following your life as you're growing up, right? Like if the first section is your culture is where you grew up in, that's something you need to have control over, right? Like you as a child who were brought up into this world in that place, that location, that is what's been given to you, right? Then you choose your profession.
Yeah.
Right. That's how you find your way in the world, how you move out into it, and then you choose your devotion later on. Like,
and then you die, and then you die,
and then you die. Yeah, and you die a legend, right? And your name is recorded through the annals of history, through song, poetry, rhyme, and tales.
I would. All right, I know this is cheesy, but I would love to have a section specifically about writing poetry in poetic forms, like kind of a similar table. Not like poems I write, but like how to write Valak or Celtic style poems in those schemes, and like giving the rhyme schemes and stuff. Would that be fun?
Yes, it would be fun. Would you want that in the game section or the player section?
Probably the player section.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, because it wouldn't be diegetic, so to speak, right? Does that make sense?
No, but that's okay. Like we want there to be insets, right? Of little specific things. Like you were talking to me the other day about how you loved like the really specific details of some source books you read as a kid. And maybe that should be one of them. Like, I'm assuming you're not imagining a whole chapter devoted to poetry. I'm imagining like, could this fit in a box? If so, then yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't imagining a chapter, a whole chapter. I guess. No. Here's a good suggestion from Dale. Prestige classes particular to each culture. Yeah, so that's another option we could explore too, like especially because legendary pathrunners themselves kind of prestige classes, right?
Yeah, but maybe Dale's saying, what if there was like a Penlevy Slayer? Or a Penlevy extreme version of the Slayer.
Right. Which I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, true. What does a Penlevy Druid look like compared to a Penavunk Druid? Yeah. Go on, sorry.
The only issue is whether or not that, because when you have like, we have all these professions and classes and so on, and you end up having like 20 new options.
Yeah.
Then you start thinking to yourself, wait, is this a source book, or do we also want to write like a player options book? Which is, but no, it's a great idea though, and definitely something we should at least try to give a fair try to see if it'll fit.
I think what I particularly like about the professions, talk about them, is it does ground the world, right? Like as adventurers moving through the world, the people that you come across most frequently will likely be members of these professions. They will be guards, they will be carpenters, right? They will be all these other things. And so that in itself is giving you lore. Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. Either way, yeah. So I like the idea of obviously the profession and giving more of that stuff is good, and then considering other places to dress it up and make it clan specific for the legendary paths or the classes specifically. We'll consider. Let's at least consider it.
Yeah, for sure. Then next section, Avallen Devotion. This will be where we have the opportunity to talk about the other world and the player-facing elements of the other world. And then also talk about what benefits you can get from devoting yourself to the Fake or of the Ever Elder or Ataraxia, so on and so forth.
So one thing that we talked about before is having each sort of section be kind of in the tone of like a writer or someone from that clan, right? Is that something we want to try to stick with, or do we want to make it a consistent tone across everything? And if so, how does that relate to how people talk about the other world?
Yeah, that's difficult, isn't it? Because like ideally, which clan was it that you called? You called the Penlevy, didn't you? Yeah,
so I think it'd be awesome to write the Penlevy from the point of view of one of their druids, right?
Yeah.
From the Isle. What Isle is it? Is it Innis Weird?
Inniswish.
Inniswish? Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about the Druid Conclave, yeah.
Yeah, and then having the Araxia stuff from the point of view of Araxia, all that stuff, so that they have like a different tone. But then the other world is meant to be a bit more. I guess they could still talk in that voice in the player section, and then it could be a bit more game master matter of fact tone for the later section.
That's a good question for chat. How do you feel about books being written in a less of an encyclopedic tone and more of a, like you said, diegetic in-world narrative, where the book is written by someone inside the world and it feels like it's written by them?
I personally love that, but I could be in the minority. I think one of the guys I point to is two books I point to are. No, one is Volo. Like, I love it when things are written from Volo or Ellemeister's point of view in Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
I liked it when. What other book does that I really enjoy? Deadlands is a little bit different. Deadlands. Have you read the Deadlands core books?
No, I don't think so. I might have read the rules once, but.
Yeah, they kind of like toe the line, right? Between. Oh no. Planescape. Planescape is like one of my favorites, right? Because Planescape, it always feels like somebody from the world is talking to you. They call you like Burke and Cutter and stuff like that, even though it's like it's like a third-person omniscient narration.
But okay, so where I land is I like it when it's used frequently but not constantly. So I like introductions to sections to be like, no, I'm in the world. Here's what we're going to find here, blah, 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 blah. But then the rest of it is kind of just, normal text. And then there might be comments in places from the same character, right? Adding like flavor and flair to a section. But I worry that if a whole section is written like that, it could get tiresome, especially if there's like rules, text and things like that, right?
I think Munibund has some thoughts on this. So let's read her thoughts and I'll share my thoughts. So Munibund says that they think it's cool, especially if it's multiple documents with different perspectives. And if you don't like something, you can always spin it with the unreliable narrator excuse. And I think that's the biggest benefit to it, right? Because sometimes when things are written sort of encyclopedically, you want game masters to be able to change things to fit their world, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes when you write it too sort of matter of fact, it's hard to sort of deviate from that, because also people are like, well, the book said this, so this is how we have to do it.
Mhm.
But by giving it the sort of tone of a narrator, it allows that flexibility, which I agree with almost 100%. And I do think in the past, for books that I liked, if most of it's written sort of narratorally,
Yeah.
so to speak, but you wanted to have the hard cold fact on something, then that's often like its own box or something,
Right.
like clarifying
Interesting.
something, which I think could work too. I mean, we can play around with it. I for especially for source books, I love the narrative style, like the point of view narrative style. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's really good for players. Because the other thing too is it's really good for players to understand what a possible voice that their character could have, right? Like, what does it mean to sound like a Penlevy? What does it mean to sound like a Pendraig?
Well, I mean, I
And to
agree,
give-
right? And
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the question is all of it like that, or is it just introductions and snippets here and there, right?
I would say almost all of
Yeah.
it, but I don't 90% of the player section. But that's, again, we can play around with it. That's kind of what I'm inclined towards, and I think it's a lot of fun doing it that way. But what does the chat think? I'm curious about that.
Yeah,
too.
you're right. So, all right,
But
each
well-
section should have a different narrative voice related to its topic of interest, right?
Yeah.
But should the narrative voice be 90% of it,
Like what
or
percentage?
introductions, or just introductions and snippets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how like another reference point is that one book, the Unearthed Arcana book, the one by the Beholder. What's the Beholder's name?
Wait, there's the Beholder. I don't know the Beholder.
hold
Maybe I
on,
do. Oh, it's like, yeah, maybe I do actually. I think I know. What
What's
you're
it?
talking
Does anyone remember? What's the name of that book? It's I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It's like so and so knows everything or whatever, or guide to everything. Okay, so Dale said that they like the introduction and snippets in the past, and then the mechanics.
about. Yeah. So
Uh,
Dale's on my side, Kurt.
Xanathar, thank you, Xanathar.
Hmm.
So that's our guide to everything. So the way that was set up, that was kind of like a combination where it was like a book that was kind of stated. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but it was like stated more like straight, but then there were a bunch of like flavor notes throughout the book.
Yeah, exactly. Like
by
commentary on
that,
things, right?
Yeah, and that could be fun too. Like I could see why one would want to do it that way as well. But his notes were less useful and more like fun
Witty.
color by
Yeah,
a snarky beholder.
I think it was entertaining as opposed to informative.
Yeah. How do beholders write? Do they just like use telepathy to like hold the quill? Is that what happens?
Beholders?
Yeah, they don't have hands, so I imagine they must use like some kind of telepathy.
Yeah, they can cast spells. Well, they get a slave to do it or something. Right?
Yeah. Well, they have slaves. We don't have slaves in Avallen yet.
I think we have some here and there. Yeah.
Yes, okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we don't talk about it too much. You guys
Yeah.
can do as you will. Do as you will. But it's not a focus of our campaign.
Kurt, Dale is asking you, because certainly not me, but probably you. Have you read the Dark Elf trilogy from the Forgotten Realms?
Yes, I have. You're talking about
I
Homeland.
knew you would
Exile.
have.
Of course, dude. You haven't read that, dude.
I don't even know what the hell
Homeland?
you're talking about. I mean, unless
That's,
you're talking about Drizzt.
Yeah, Drizzt. It's like the second. I know. So here's the thing. I didn't read the first. Drizzt first appears in the Icewind Dale trilogy, which is like Wolfgar, like the barbarian that takes place in Iceland with Dale, and then like Drizzt becomes a huge like hero, or he became super popular, and then the author wrote that trilogy, and then so do you know anything about Menzo Baranzan and the whole Drizzt's like origins?
Is Menzo Baranzan the city?
The
Drow city. I
Yeah,
know about that
exactly.
place because of Baldur's Gate 3. Thank you, Baldur's Gate 3. I know bits about Drizzt as his legend, just as a casual consumer of D&D lore. I know about his panther, his two swords, that he's a good drow, but
Yeah, he comes from like a city of like evil drow, and they have a
Yeah.
bunch of slaves and houses, and they have to vie for position. And so Drizzt starts, he trains there and becomes a warrior, but they becomes disillusioned, and he eventually leaves Menzoberranzan and so on. But yeah, they do have a whole slave culture there, which is, to be fair though, in the modern day, the dark. I do feel like it's more problematic for a lot of readers. I fucking love the Dark Elf trilogy. I read that when I was a kid too. That was like one of the first novel trilogies I read also.
But pertinently, Dale said that he likes the Drizzt intros to each chapter.
Yeah, so maybe that's the thought, right? Where that's a convention we can mess around with too. Whether or not we just have a historian talk about everything and just snip it in, and that could also be a framing device that makes sense, right? I think at some point behind the scenes we're just gonna like write stuff as kind of a style guide, like a narrative style guide, and see what we like is probably the most important thing. But that's not something that's so easy to do on stream, so we won't do that now.
Anyway, moving on to professions, then devotion. That's what you choose later in life, right?
Yeah. So
but this is the player facing stuff, right? Plus mechanical benefits.
Yeah.
And then we move on to the GM section. And this would be... I was thinking of, like, what I said earlier, practical examples and in-depth lore.
Yeah.
What I'm imagining is, like, the best way to divide up adventures is by factions, right? You have the like clan leadership, and then you might have, I don't know, rebels or something like that. And each of those could have their own section with lore detailing about them, and then an example or something, or like the Everfather. I don't know, this is the section I'm most not sure about how to structure or what is in there, but I want, for example, to be a section talk about the Everfather from the GM's perspective, including secrets and all that good stuff and ideas for adventures, and then maybe an Everfather temple or some other location.
Some location that's important to the culture, so to speak. Dale said that adds flavor, lore, and sets a place or location. Yeah, 100%. So that's a big argument for putting those sections in. So don't worry, we're gonna have point of view stuff for sure. It's just about finding the right balance. And then so I think that's okay. Even with the factions, I think similar to your common, uncommon, general, rare knowledge.
Yeah.
If it's a publicly known group or faction, it's okay to sort of talk about it, obviously, in the first section, and then have
exactly. Like it would be mentioned somewhere in the Avallen cultures, but then we want the deeper lore and then examples of how you can include that as a game master in your campaign, right?
Right.
Yeah.
As long as the whole section is geared towards the game, I feel like you have the most flexibility with the section that's geared towards the game master, because you just assume that anything you give them is something that's going to be a tool they use. So I think there's a higher tolerance for info dumping, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't want to do too much of it, obviously, but just I think what you're proposing is good.
Okay. And then we have the most important final two sections that every source book must have, which is magical items and the bestiary. So magical items, this I do feel like maybe this is a thing that can be spread out in other sections. Like, I don't know, that's another thing. It's like, okay, maybe there's a Pencower magical item and that should be in the GM Pencower section. But then maybe you do just want a section just for magical items just to look through. Is it easier for a game master if you want to look for a magical item to include in your adventure, or if you want to find something to inspire your adventure, you go to the magical item section and there's all the magical items. You know what I mean? Is it annoying if they're spread out and peppered through everything instead?
I think the easier way to do it is, I think your instinct is right of putting all the items together, because they're magical items are in themselves both adventure hooks and equipment guide, right, in one. But just as it comes along and we get ideas or we talk about something, then it'll just we should just be loose about that. Be open to talking about it in the earlier sections if it comes up like, oh yeah, there was a fucking grail or something.
Yeah,
Not a
exactly.
grail,
That's the
but-
thing. You want to hint at things. You want the sections to synergize, right? In the culture section, you might talk about something like the legendary sword
Yeah.
Khalidfolk, but then in the magical item section, it's there for the GM to use and place in the game somewhere. Yeah.
I guess what I'm suggesting is we just kind of, that's one of the things that we should develop in parallel. Like we should keep thinking of like cool artifacts and items. But as we also do writing, we'll just come up with stuff naturally as well. And then as we come up with new items independently, we'll just find places where we could sort of like mix and mix and match.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think you should feel obligated either way to be like they only have to be in this section or this section, or if we mention it in the end book, it has to be the beginning book.
Right.
If it's mentioned in the beginning, it should almost certainly be in the GM section for sure. But the reverse, I don't think should be true. I think you should just have stuff that isn't in the player's guide that's just cool for the GM to play around with.
Wait, are you saying if we mention a magical item in the player's guide, it doesn't necessarily happen to be in the magical item section?
No. If it mentions it in the player's guide, like the player-facing materials, that information, whatever we mention in the player's guide should be in the GM section.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah.
If we come up with other magical items, they don't necessarily have to be in the
No,
player's
of
guide.
course not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Dale says maybe a couple of cultural heirlooms or magical items specific to culture. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think
Yeah, come up with grandma's hand stitched kilt.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is I want to make
plus one to agility.
Magical items. I want each of these magical items to have a poem, a lore, a history, previous owners. Where you might find it in the world. Yeah, that kind of thing.
There's a couple ways to approach it, because on the other hand, you could also just have like list of different things and cool things, but it depends on how much space we want to devote to it, I guess.
Yeah.
And how many items. My gut instinct tells me that something like 3 to 4 items kind of related to each clan. So is that between 15 to 20? Yeah. So that's what my gut says, but we'll see where we land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's good. Magical item section is good. Also, the Raxian deck of many things. That's what we're gonna put in the.
Yeah, we put a reference in there for that. What could it be? Could we be something else other than a deck? Probably not, because we're playing with a deck of cards in the game, right? It should be a deck of many things.
The totem of like an Ogum totem or something.
No, I think it should be the deck of various objects. No, the deck of various means.
The deck of Exilium. The board. No, I got it. The board of the Exilium.
Do you mean
it's going to be the do you know the game of the
right, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to make the game of in our world, but there's going to be a magical version of it that when you play it, things happen like Jumanji.
Jumanji, let's go.
It's going to be It's going to be Raxian Jumanji is basically what
Raxian Jumanji. Takes you to the other world, yeah. Okay.
Rune Tablets of Wonder. That's pretty good. Yeah, like
Rune Tablets of Wonder. I'm writing it down. Rune Tablets of Wonder.
It's just like 52 stone slabs. And they're all just
stacked up. Like it's like a whole room.
Yeah.
You need a step ladder to.
Yeah. You have to make a disadvantaged agility check every time you try to read something from it.
Yeah.
And it might collapse on you. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Dale says maybe a section of adventure seeds for each culture, which could have some of these magic items. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I imagine this faction section would be like. Dependent faction, adventure seeds, tie it to the magical items. Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Stuff we come up with, stuff that, we'll see as it develops. We'll figure it out. But
and then you end with the bestiary, right? Why is the bestiary always last?
Because it's the easiest thing to see. Because you usually have art, so it usually feels like a compendium type of situation, and it's ever expanding. I mean, original DD, like if I'm not mistaken, like at least second edition, they released things in like monstrous compendiums before.
True, it was its own book, right? So it was the beginning, middle, and the end.
Yeah, I think in first edition it was its own book, and then sometimes they release them as like mini books, and then later on they
Yeah.
they used to be like little sheets. But basically, yeah, because you know you're not gonna see every monster ever, but they're also fun to read and look at and give you ideas.
So then I look at this, right, and I'm thinking, well, should we cut the bestiary and like make that its own book? But then the source book isn't complete without beasts, right?
No, not necessarily. I don't think that's necessarily true. I feel like I think you could have some new, because you already have. Okay, here's what you can do. You already have a description of monsters in Avallen, but they don't have specific stats.
Correct.
So what you can do for the Bestiary is just do the stats for all the monsters in the Avallen book.
But then we don't deep dive them.
Yeah, then you don't deep dive them, or you have a deep dive for certain creatures. Or you can do both. You can basically have stats for all the creatures, but then just choose a few that you have like one creature in each land that has its own like special layer or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or it's a whole other book, like a book of layer style thing where we do a deep dive.
Yeah.
Which I think is also potentially quite fun and useful for game masters.
Yeah. Okay, so so here's the next section of this. Say I want this book to be 250 to 300 pages long, right? I don't want to go mammoth size like Against the Fairy Queens, which is almost 400 pages. I want to be 250 to 350 just because of printing costs, shipping costs, postage costs, that kind of thing, right?
Another important thing with designing a game is being realistic about your page numbers. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, so now we say that, and the actual answer is if I've written 250 to 300, well, then we should plan for 200 because it always spills over, right? It always spills over because 250 to 300 was how big the Fairy Queen was supposed to be. Ended up being 378 pages instead. So
sure.
Yeah, so let's say plan for 200 pages. So then where do we spend those pages? Well, the introduction, what is that? That's going to be like 3 to 5 pages long, tops, right? Shouldn't be bigger than 5 pages, should it?
Probably not.
Just
not. No.
Introduce the world and storytellers, yeah. Then the cultures, this is pretty substantial. This is this is a lot of stuff here. And it's rules as well. You go on.
I mean, I want this section to be like 100 to 120 pages.
Jesus, yeah. I'm thinking 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. I'm thinking 50 pages.
50 pages?
Yeah, like 5 for each section, plus some wiggle room, right?
You don't think we can do 10 on each? I feel like I can do 10. We can do 10 on each.
We can do 10, but that's the thing. We've got to strip it down. Like, well, then what else is not going to budge? Let's save 50 for now, and we can come back later.
Sure.
But so let's compare to the rulebook actually. What do we have in the rulebook?
So in the rulebook, the sections are.
The Penkawer is 1.5 pages, and the Penbive is about 1-2 pages. Yeah, 1-2 pages. So this is like 2 to 3 times the current content on the clans.
Yeah. Which is, I think, what people want. I mean, isn't that what they want?
Yes, yeah, but we're not finished yet, right? Because that's just the player-facing stuff. Then professions. This should be a lot shorter. There should be maybe 1 page per profession, basically.
Sure.
Right? And there's probably going to be, there's 10 of those, that's just 10 pages tops. Yeah. Actually, I currently already have 1 page per profession. Yeah, maybe one. Let's do 10 to 15 pages. Just say 15 pages. Then the devotion section. This should probably be similar in length to the Avallen cultures. Or maybe less actually, because it's player facing, right? Like how much of the players going to know about the Evereld or the Faker versus the Pen of Vunk, right? So,
I feel like the player section, like in the books, we basically only have like a half a page to a page for each of the otherworld sections.
Yeah. So let's do 2 pages each as a spread, right?
2 sounds right to me.
Yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So let's just say 15 pages again. now we get into more of the meat of the Era ones, the Fey Core, and all the clans again. This is gonna be the huge section. Well, not well. The other sections laid the groundwork, right? But let's just say you wanted 10 pages for each clan. Well, there's 5 here, and there's gonna be 5 here as well. So it's gonna be a total of 10, right? And then there's also gonna be maybe 5 pages on each of the otherworldly realms as well, right? Talking about the secrets, the Ever ones, the core, and all the fiends and other creatures that live there, right? So
if in the core book we had one, let's see, if I'm looking at the Penafunk, for example, the Penafunk goes 1, 2.5 pages about per section. So I would want the fairy section to be at least as long as 2.5 pages. Is 5 pages? Is 5 pages too much? Maybe not.
For the Ever one, the Fey Core, and the other creatures that live there, maybe 5 pages is too much, but I think it could be okay. Let's just say as an estimate, though. So,
sure.
So then, for the factions and adventures, that includes maps as well, right? Doesn't include maps and blood other things. So if it's 5 for each clan, 5 for each otherworldly realm, that's already 100 pages, right?
Yeah.
No, wait, there's 100. Wait, is that 100 pages? That's 5, that's 25, that's 50. Right? Am I done? 5 times by 5.
5 times 5 is 25.
Oh, yeah, it's 50. 50, yeah. Plus extras. So, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80. That's about 80 pages. Yeah.
80 pages seems good.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about before, right? So now we're talking about 80 pages plus the 50, plus the 15 from here. Now we're talking, that's like 100 pages of lore. Magical items, 5 to 10 pages. Maybe just 5 pages. I don't know. 10 pages.
Yeah.
Dale, what do you mean by MRP's details about the land? Oh, you're talking about flora and fauna? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I like ecologies as well. Don't worry, I love that shit. I love ecologies and stupid little detail.
Yeah, so here's a good reason for having multiple writers on your team. Like for example, a section that I'm always happy with that Moonabons wrote is in the character creation section. Each of the clans have their appearance. The appearance of the people in the clan, it talks about the outfits that they wear, the kind of clothing that they wear. And that was written by Moonabons because she's a tailor and she knows that kind of thing. I don't know that kind of thing, so I had no idea how to write this kind of stuff. But that was all her and awesome. So yes, Kurt loves flora, fauna, ecology. It will be in the book.
Yeah, I love cultural tools, right? Instruments and like little bits of things about songs and poetry and all that stuff. Yeah, we're gonna try to fit it as much as we can. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But what's our page count right now? Because we're getting close to.
So
we're starting to hit stream end, so I want to make sure that this is the last thing we do.
Oh yeah, 1 minute. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's say 20 for a bestiary. That's probably too much. Let's say 15.
How much is your original bestiary or the original?
Great question. Well, we're not. I don't think we're gonna do every creature in there. You know what I mean? I think we're gonna be deep diving some of them, but maybe. I don't know. How big is the original bestiary you're at?
It's from animals. You have 188 to 199. So it's about 10 pages.
It's about 10 pages. So 15 would be more. Okay. Let's just say 20 and then realize we're way over count. Okay, let's find out. Let's see, chat. Where are we? 5 plus 50, 55, 70, 85. That's 165, 170, 190. We're under count, Kurt.
Yes.
Let me check that again. I'm going to get the calculator out just to be sure. One more time. Okay, 5 plus 50 plus 15 plus 15 plus 80 plus 5 plus 20. No, I was right, 190. That's beautiful. 10 pages under count.
All right. Don't worry. It'll balloon from there.
And I'm budgeting for 250 really, so that's great. So where would we want to put more pages if we could? Probably the bestiary.
Avallen cultures. That shit.
Avallen
You don't
cultures.
believe me. You don't believe me yet, but that shit's gonna balloon. It's gonna be huge. Yeah, it's gonna be huge.
Munabun says she will fill the extra 10 pages with stories. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, for sure. And I consider that part of the culture section in a way. But yeah, we'll figure it out.
Cool. Awesome. I'm happy with that. That's great. So now I think we're about to finish. Let's think about going forward. What we want to do now is we want to, I guess, make examples for each section, right? We want to do one bit from Avallen cultures. We want to do one bit from Avallen devotion. We want to do one bit from factions and adventures, so that we have a template of the kind of content we want to make the book.
And then use that, and then show that to people for the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and also to show that to other writers so they can
other writers. Oh, that's true.
Start working on it too, right? Like our Munabons and our castles and castles in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is exciting.
Yeah.
Chat, you've just witnessed the birth of a book outline.
Yes. Yes.
So,
congratulations, it's a source book. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, things are gonna keep changing as we go on and all that stuff, 100%. But I'm excited. This is gonna be a fun project.
Yep. And that's it. Now we just have to make it.
Now, or convince people to let us make the thing.
Yeah. Convince
yeah. But it's a good faith effort. We're honest workers. We want to make sure we make things that are fun for you guys, fun for us, and let you be part of the Legends of Avallen community. I think it's fun.
Thank you.
Happy birthday! It is a happy birthday. That's right.
Yeah, thank you for your contributions, Dale, Hobo, Munabons, Castles and Castles.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, appreciate the thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel.
Yep, next week, Wednesday. Although I think the clocks are changing for the UK this weekend. I think.
Ooh, what does that mean?
It means I think we're going forward an hour, but I can't remember. So I will find out, I will learn, I will study the clocks, and I will let you know more. I hope that doesn't mean...
I have to wake up at 7 a.m. or 6:45
exactly.
a.m. to get
Maybe we won't be the same time next week. I will find out and share more. But until then, thank you all. If you're in America, have a good evening. If you're in the UK, go to bed. That's what I'm doing now. And if you're in Japan, have a good day. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best. All right, take it easy, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, dude. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, everyone.
All right, no, thank you.